Hello, this video is part of a series that I'll be introducing to the interwebs, and it's going to be dealing with apologetics, which is the Christian pursuit of answering and discussing with non-believers the logic and reason behind belief. Now, to qualify and define a term real quick, I would like to, if I may, use the term religious and assign it to the pursuit of God and the belief in Jesus Christ for salvation, if I may. I understand that word can denote quite a bit, but in this case, I would appreciate if you would allow me that usage. The answer is, or the answer to what I'm trying to say has to do with how is it possible to have logic or reason in a religious context, okay? And so that's going to be the spirit of this series. So hopefully you bear with me. If it bothers you and you can't take it, I will not be offended if you close out the channel. Say what you got to say in the comments, unsubscribe, however it works out. This is just part of me, so it is what it is. And without further ado, here we go. This is going to be about Jonah and the whale. One of the points that is often brought up during an apologetic pursuit has to do with whether or not a man was physically eaten by a whale or fish, depending on the translation that you're going by. Whether or not a person was eaten by a fish and then lived inside the fish 3 days later and then was puked up on the shore that God wanted him to put up. You know, and it has to do with the discussion of whether or not the Bible is literal, parable, what have you. Now, what's worth mentioning is that, Jesus only spoke in parables when he walked the earth, and he said the reason for him doing that was to help people in comprehending a message that he was trying to explain. In the case of the minor prophets and also the major prophets such as Isaiah, quite a bit of their experience, however, was literal. So a literal event also carried with it a spiritual or moral message, but these events did in fact occur as it pertained to Isaiah. So it's assumed that, being it's still in the same style, that these events pertaining to Jonah also occurred. But the reason why I bring it up is because in the midst of all this discussion of whether or not a person was literally in a fish for 3 days or not, there's an amazing message in the book of Jonah dealing mostly with how a believer should feel and treat those who do not believe and those who need to hear the truth or need to hear a certain message that we've been asked to give them. Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. He tried to escape. He tried to go to a place called Tarshish, which was in pretty much a different direction than where God wanted him to go. I mean, God literally told this man, go to Nineveh and tell them that if they don't clean up their act, they're going to be destroyed. Now, we could get into how God destroys things or what have you at a later time. But if we can focus in this particular message about how when Jonah tried to escape from where God wanted him to go, God made it very difficult. The ship that Jonah was on ended up being in such a big storm that these sailors, these experienced men of the sea, began to pray to the things that they had faith in. It's the way the Bible writes it is to their gods, and they eventually cast lots. And oddly enough, that when these men cast lots, they determined that Jonah was actually the problem on the ship causing all these events to occur. And when they asked him about it, he's like, more or less, yeah, I'm running away from what God wanted me to do. And he told the men, he said, if you want, just throw me in the water and everything will be fine. And they didn't want to do that, so they tried to row towards shore, but they couldn't. And eventually, asking for forgiveness for doing so, they throw Jonah over the side. And everything immediately calms out. Boom, fish swallows him up, pukes him on the shore of Nineveh, after Jonah does this prayer of repentance and acknowledgement and everything else, and he goes, albeit still somewhat reluctantly, to Nineveh and tells them that they're going to need to change their ways or they will be destroyed. And much, this is important, much to Jonah's dismay, they repented. He didn't want that. You know, it was almost as if he wanted to be special. He felt so terrible that the city wasn't going to be destroyed because of its misdeeds and because of its transgressions, that Jonah wanted to die over it. So he sits and he just, Jonah gets up on a hill, more or less, and watches Nineveh, expecting God to destroy it at any moment. And then God does it. And then God makes a little tree grow up behind him. It said weed, and grew it up in a day and gave Jonah shade for a day. And then the next day, God sends a worm that eats the weed and then makes Jonah's day very, very unpleasant. And he asks Jonah again, you know, what do you think of that? And Jonah's like, oh man, I want to die. And then God's like, okay, so you care more about a weed. You would rather me not destroy a weed, but yet a city that has 120,000 people you don't care about. So that is the story, and I think it's a message that shouldn't be lost, especially from the standpoint of the believer. You know, when you're in that situation where you're trying to explain your faith to someone or share your faith with someone, and you're getting really, really upset, and they bring up the whale, I think it's a very good opportunity to reflect on the story of Jonah and what the actual message was there. So I hope this video helps some people out, and please accept my apology for stumbling over my words at the beginning. It was a little difficult to get started, but bear with me, and I hope that you guys stick around for some other points on the series. As it stands, the next one that I plan on putting up, and you know, it'll be a little bit of time after this posting, it has to do with man being created from dust. I'm going to go ahead and address that, and we'll go from there. Anyway, y'all be good, and we'll see you later.